Hi everyone, my name is Leah Fisher and this is my channel, Budgeting for Future. Today we are doing my debt story, so I am going to hopefully lay it all out for you guys, pretty much working all the way from when I first started earning money, I first got into debt, all the way up until now. So hopefully you will enjoy this. If you do, consider subscribing. I would love to have you here on the channel. About 72% of people who watch my videos are not yet subscribed, and that's totally fine, but I did just hit 300 subscribers and I'm so excited about that. So if you would like to be a part of getting me to 400 subscribers, I would love to have you here. Let's go ahead and just jump right into this thing. Now, I did start my first job right out of high school in 2014. I knew about Dave Ramsey already at that time, so I was very concerned about making sure that I wasn't just being ostentatious with my spending. I tried really hard to save as much as I could. I had a budget and everything. My budget was to spend only $25 a week and then only $20 on gas. I remember that first budget, and I obviously was living at home and really didn't have a lot of reasons to spend money because I lived in a small town. So that was kind of where I started. That being said though, the first debt that I did get myself into was when I went to college with student loans. Yes, I got to have the pleasure of having those, and I still have some to this day, but I did end up having to take out quite a bit of money. I remember my first loan that I took out was $13,000, and it was at a 8.5% interest rate, which is crazy. I watched that whole account the whole time I was in college, and just the amount of money that built up in interest was crazy, and it was really scary to kind of see those numbers continuously build. While I was in college, I would say I took on about $35,000 in student loans that were private student loans. And then I was able to qualify for some public student loans, and that equals closer to about $14,000. So I ended up graduating with right around $44,000 of debt, or at least I should have. During my sophomore summer of college, I met my husband, and on one of our very first dates, we kind of talked a little bit about money, which was weird for me. I had never been on a date before where the person I was on a date with wanted to talk about money, or our philosophy on money, which was really interesting. He is definitely not the financial nerd of the household. It's me, hence why I have this channel, but he had a few really good points or things that he really valued that he felt really important to share with me very early on. The first was the amount of debt that you were in. He thought that to be very important when starting a life with someone, that they knew how much debt they were in and were willing to share that with a partner, and then also try not to be in debt. It's not really the way he kind of grew up, for lack of better, and so it wasn't really something he wanted to have forever. And then the other thing he found really important was someone's credit score, because obviously so many things that you want to do are reliant on your credit score. So you want to rent an apartment, they're going to run your credit score. You need a new car and you're going to get a loan for that. You need a credit score. You want to buy a house with someone, you need a credit score. And I was like, I don't know my credit score. Also, I'm 20. Why would I know my credit score? And so I kind of was like, yeah, I mean, I have student loans. They're not crazy. They're more than the average, right? Because I think the average student graduates with right around $36,000 worth of student loans. And mine was closer to 44 or 45. And so with this information, I was able to be like, okay, maybe I'll focus on the credit score part, because even if it's not he's going to meet my person eventually, he made some really good points and I definitely like seeped them in. I applied for my first credit card to hopefully start building my credit score. It was a Discover student card, and I had a $500 limit to start out with, and I would just pay for gas and groceries with it. Again, I was spending a pretty low amount of money just living, because I was living in either a residence hall or I was living with family during this time, so I didn't have a lot of expenses, but I did start using my credit card in order to make those purchases. And I will say that I was never in credit card debt during that time. I'll tell you later about when the credit card debt came in, but I did a really good job of managing that money. And then as my junior year came around, I was working. I had worked the whole time I was in college, so I tried my best to not have to take out student loans to pay for my cost of living per se, but I did also try to spend a little bit of my personal money to try and cut down on tuition and paying out of pocket as best as I could, working, minimum wage jobs while in school. And during my junior year, I kind of had hit a point where I was making about $1,000 a month, and my cost of living wasn't nearly that high. So I did start working on paying off some of my student loans. I originally focused on my public student loans that were the lowest amounts. I had a few that were like $1,000, and so I kind of focused there at first, but then I remembered that dang student loan that had that 8.5% interest rate, and it had grinded my gears for the longest time because it was $13,000, just one loan. So big, right? But I was like, no, this is the one I really need to be attacking. Like, it's costing me so much money to keep in my life. My public student loans only had like 4% interest rates. I was like, nothing about this makes sense. So I switched up. I went from trying to focus on my public student loans to my private student loans and started chipping away slowly there. By the time I had graduated, I had about $42,000 in student loans. So I was able to take off a tiny bit of money while I was still in school, and then I graduated. And that is when I got my first big girl job of 40 hours a week or more, because again, a little bit of a workaholic. I tried to do as much overtime as I could. I took on part-time jobs sometimes to try to fill in some of the gaps, and I was putting about 80% of my money that I took home right to my student loans. At that time, I was living with my current husband, who at the time was more of my boyfriend, who ended up turning into my fiance. You know how marriages work. So we were living mostly off of his income and just stockpiling all of mine towards all of my student loans, because his debt level was very different from mine, and he was like, girl, you gotta get rid of these things, like they're gonna start us off on a bad foot. So I was heavily attacking those with his support emotionally and a little bit financially, because he was paying a lot of our bills, but obviously not all of them. And while we were working on that and starting to plan a wedding, we also decided to purchase our first home together. Now, if you have seen my other video about house hacking, we did choose to house hack our first house, and if you want to know more information about that, I will hopefully link it up in the eye and also down below in the description. But we ended up purchasing a duplex, which is a house with 2 units, and we were able to put 20% down, so we didn't have to pay PMI. We lived in one half of the house, and then we rented out the other half of the house to people who covered the cost of the mortgage, the water, and also the trash bill, which was a real game changer. Obviously, during that time, we had quite a few hiccups happen and house emergencies that we ended up having to cash flow, but we were able to do them for the most part. We did pretty much, as soon as we purchased this property, go in, got one of the kitchens, the one that we lived in, and remade it pretty much floor to ceiling. we were able to cash flow that whole project. We spent about $7,000 on that, getting the cabinets taken out, the flooring, everything. We had to put up new drywall because the walls were such a hot mess, and ended up turning out to have an absolutely beautiful kitchen. If I have a photo, I will put it up here. It is still our pride and joy. We worked so hard on that thing, and we had so many wonderful family members help us with that project. Just tons of memories there, but we were able to cash flow that housing project. And once we were fully moved in, we were pretty much living without having to pay for our rent or mortgage. Because of that, the wedding that we ended up having, we were able to cash flow. We did have a little bit of family help with paying for that, but the majority of it came right from our pockets because we were able to purchase a house with a family gift. And then from there, we ended up paying off all of my private student loans just a few weeks after we had gotten married. They were completely out of our life, and it was such an exciting day. And almost immediately after that, we got a little crazy with spending money and everything. It felt like there wasn't really like that drive to like change things and get out of debt. Like, we lived in the house and someone else paid the rent and the mortgage, and we had some student loans but not a lot, and we didn't have any more credit card debt. Like, we never had any. That was not in our lives. So we were like, okay, we're doing so well, this is so great, let's go to Europe for our honeymoon, and then let's get pregnant, and now let's make a ton of financial moves that are based solely in fear and scarcity mindset, and just figuring out like how to become parents and trying to do it in like exactly the right way, which isn't possible. And I think that kind of was really a pivotal moment in our lives where we were pregnant, we had just gotten married. We were so happy, and we were like, there is no way that this baby can live in this house with us. Our unit was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. We had 4 cats. The litter boxes were in the guest bedroom. There was no place to put the litter boxes if we used the guest bedroom for the baby. We talked about having the baby in our room for a year. Good thing we didn't do that. She didn't even stay in our room for 6 weeks. That's another story for another day. But we're like, all right, guys, this is crazy. No. Let's buy a new house. And this house will be our adult house, the one that I'm in today. And it's a wonderful house. I don't regret this purchase at all. I do regret maybe not planning better for it, and kind of just, again, feeling like nervous and scared, and like, I don't know what a baby needs. Like, it needs a crib. We didn't use a crib, but they need like clothes, love. And my husband was like, and babies need new houses. And it was an ongoing joke for like 6 months where we're like, we found out that we were having a girl. And my husband turns to me while we're with the ultrasound tech and goes, girls need big houses. So when we purchased this house, we purchased it with 5% down. So we do pay PMI, or private mortgage insurance, where we're paying pretty much to ensure the bank that we will not default on our loan. And if we do, they can claim insurance money for it, us defaulting. So we get no benefit. We pay $100 just to make sure their bag is secured, literally. And in order to even come up with the 5%, we did have to take out a 401k loan, which, if you've been on my channel long enough, you know we are still working to pay that off. But we did originally take out a loan for $4,200, so $4,200 in order to even have the money to come to closing. And I kid you not, on the day of closing, we had the 401k loan money. We had a little bit of money in our bank, and that day we had like $3,000 to our name. $3,000, 2 houses, and a baby on the way. And again, the house that we bought is great, but we did buy it for a really good price because it needed a little bit of work done before you could move into it. So it desperately needed new carpet and it needed new paint throughout the house. So we did have my husband paint all the walls. This is his masterpiece. He worked on it for like a month, so it was a lot of hard work. But between the cost of getting that work done and then getting new carpet throughout the house, we had to, right? We didn't have to do any of this. Like, that's the hard thing with debt, is like, I feel like a lot of people go into debt being like, oh, well, I had to. Like, there was no way the baby would fit in the house. There was no way we could live with ugly paint that it looked really bad. So there's no way we could do this, that, the other, and I'm sure we would have found a way, right? When you do have access to tools of debt, it's really hard to confuse your wants and your needs, right? And so we ended up putting in the new carpet before we moved in. So we did end up putting about $3,600 onto a credit card in order to pay for someone to come in and fully recarpet our house. We put it on a credit card and then immediately did a balance transfer to put the amount into 0% interest, and we only had to pay a 3% transfer fee. Now, when we did that, we did do it with the goal of paying off that credit card as fast as we could, but we did have a few months where we needed to really attack that because we had not yet paid it off. And so we spent about 5 months where we did have credit card debt. It was the first time that we had credit card debt as a married couple, and luckily that is now gone from our lives. During all of this, we also bought a new car and had to pay off that car loan, which we did completely in cash about 3 years after originally purchasing it. And so we've tried our best to make sure our debt stayed manageable, but you can definitely tell that with our story, we are the type of people, and I'm the type of person where I'm like, get nervous or scared or get anxious, and I'm like, everything can get fixed if you just spend boatloads of money. And we'll do it with debt. And so again, we're trying really hard to curb those mindsets, and I hope that if you enjoyed hearing our debt story, that you go ahead and consider giving this video a like. And if you want to hear more from me, please consider subscribing as well. I just hit 300 subscribers. I think I already said this, but I'm like low-key super proud of myself. So if you would like to also be here with us on the channel, that would be fantastic. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope your budget stays balanced. Bye!